Hey, and welcome to Live, Love, Risa. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, hey girl. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make the shirt skirt. I've made quite a few of these, each one beautiful, each one unique. This is a cool way to upcycle some men's button-up shirts. I'll try to list all of the supplies in the box below. I think it's a box. I don't know what they call it. I don't know. Let's get started. So the first step in making the shirt skirt is gathering your shirts. I go to a thrift store where all of the items are 50 cents on Wednesday. I don't always go on Wednesday because it's crazy. So sometimes I get there on Tuesday when it's 75 cents. I always go with men's shirts because they're larger, so you get more coverage. A lot of times I have a color scheme in mind already, or sometimes I'm in the store and I see a shirt that inspires me. And so this shirt had a bunch of neutral colors, and I thought that that would make a pretty skirt. Then I would go through and I would find solids of this color, that color, that color, and then any other shirt that I find that kind of matches this color scheme. You can find men's shirts with all different kinds of patterns, but I always incorporate a couple of solids just to kind of balance the skirt and not make it look too busy. And now let's cut shirts. What I like to use is this front panel, this front panel, and then the whole back panel. I start by cutting right along this placket. I skip right up under this button. And then from this side seam, I just go straight up, bypassing the curve of the sleeve. I just try to keep it straight. That makes it easier when you are sewing it together. You don't have all these curves that you need to work around. So let's look at that. This is what we end up with. So we've got a little bit of a curve here, but when I'm sewing, I'll just sew straight and straight. Okay, so that's one. So here's that side where we cut the front off. We'll start here, same line, and I'm going straight up, cut past that curve in the sleeve. I go right up to the yoke, and then I cut across. Now I'm always leaving like a 1/2 inch because I feel like I have a bunch of shirt collars and sleeves upstairs that eventually I might do something with. I can't throw things away. It's a problem. I cut all the way across the yoke, and then I go down the other side. One large piece. And then I'm going to do the last side. So that's our last piece. So then I take these 3 pieces, I fold them up, and that is one stack. Now that I've got those all cut out, I lay them out kind of in a grid. And this is something that I just made up myself because I knew that when I put the skirt together, I don't want to see too many of the same color print on one side or in one row or whatever. So let me show you the grid. This is the grid. The way I laid these out is I tried to separate the plaids from the solids from the stripes. So if you look at any row, you most likely will not have, with the exception of this one, because I thought I had another stripe, but turns out I had 2 plaid. But this one is small and this one is big, so it'll be fine. When I start sewing and piecing them together, I would go these 3, then I would go these 3, then these 3. And then I'll change it up and I'll do these 3, these 3, these 3. And then I'll go across, and I just try to make sure that I'm switching it up every time so that we get variety when we put that skirt together. With my pieces cut out, it's time to start putting them together. I'm going to show you how I lay everything out. So I have a side panel, another side panel, and one back center piece. So we are switching to voiceover. My sewing machine is really, really loud, and I was popping my gum. So here we go. I start by putting the hems of the shirt together. This will become a part of the hem of the skirt. And if you do it this way and not upside down, you'll have a little less to hem at the end. So I put those hems together and I sew all the way up the longest side of the shirt. Because the shirts are different sizes, different cuts, the side seams will not always line up. You can see here, that's the curve of where that sleeve is that I try to bypass, but it doesn't always work out. You just kind of have to eyeball it and just sew it straight. On the other side of this back panel, we're doing the exact same thing, lining up the hems of the shirts and going straight down the longest side of the shirt. Because some shirts are longer than others, it doesn't always match up when we get to the end of this stitch. We will address that issue later on in the video. You should end up with one long panel 3 pieces wide. And now you just do that about 8 more times. Now it's time to serge. Because I have to go in and iron these serged seams flat anyway, now is when I do the ironing of the whole panel. It just makes sense to wait because I'm just going to be balling them up and throwing them around anyway. This is also where I take the time to cut away all of the excess fabric that didn't quite line up at the top. When all of my pieces are ironed, then I start thinking about the measurement of the waist. My waist is 39 inches. I take my waist measurement and divide it by the number of panels I have, which is 9. That gives me 4.3, and then I round that number up to the nearest whole number, which is 5. That lets me know that 5 inches of every panel will be a part of my waistband. Let's do another one. Say your waist is 27 inches. We divide by 9 because we have 9 panels. That gives us 3. But we still want to round up to the next whole number, which is 4. If we go with 3, that would make your waistband without the elastic 27 inches. And this needs to stretch. It needs to be bigger than your waist, and you need to be able to pull it up over your hips. So we round up to 4. That means that the center 4 inches of every panel will be a portion of our waistband. Let me show you what that looks like on a mannequin. So then this 5 inches is going to be part of the waistband. Okay. This 5 inches is going to be a part of the waistband as well. Where these two pieces meet, that's going to be a side seam. Now I'm pinning this inside out, but just so you can see, it's going to be a side seam. So all the way down to this point, that's the end. Same thing on this side. This 5 inches is going to be the waistband. And then this, where it opens, that's going to be your side seam. All right, our skirt is starting to take shape. This is just 3 of those panels pinned together. Next, I'll pin 3 more together, then I'll pin the final 3 together. I like to do this part in stages because this is a lot of fabric that we're working with. I take those pieces that I just pinned and I sew them together. Then I should be left with 3 big pieces. I take those 3 big pieces and combine them using the exact same method, and then I serge everything. At the end of all of that, I should have one really big skirt. We finally come to the part where we can put that waistband on. I measure my elastic by simply putting it around my waist and pulling until it's comfortable. Here I am marking the elastic with white chalk at 1/2 of an inch all the way around. This is my guide for when I'm putting the skirt and the elastic together. I take my waistband. In one hand I hold the seam where I close the elastic. Directly across from that will be my center front. I stick a pin in that. I bring those 2 pins together and I hold the elastic flat, and now each end of that will be the side seams. So I have now marked the center front and center back and both side seams of the elastic. To ensure that the gathers of the skirt are evenly distributed around my waist, I do the exact same thing. I know that I want this plaid piece to be the front of the skirt. It was my inspiration and it brings everything else together, makes it look cohesive. So I am going to mark that with a pin as my center front. I pull the skirt tight, and directly across from that pin is my center back. Then I bring those 2 pins together and I pull the skirt tight, and each end will be my left and right side, my side seams. Now I have 4 pins in my elastic, 4 pins in my skirt. I find the center back and I match it up with the seam of the elastic. Then I pin it together, and then I just work my way around both, matching up the pins. Sewing these 2 pieces together is just as simple as taking your time and following the guides. Remember those white chalk marks that I made earlier? I am laying the top of the skirt directly on top of those white marks, and I'm holding the elastic tight while I sew. I just keep sewing until I reach that first pin, and then I grab the next pin, pull it out nice and tight, readjust, making sure that my skirt is following those guides, and then sew until I reach the next pin. I continue until I've made it all the way around. Now I'm going to go around and stitch one more time on the very edge of this elastic so that everything lays flat on the outside. Continuing to pull and stretch as I sew. Everything looks good here. Now it's time for the very last step. This is a part of the hem that was already in the shirt. Now I'm just working my way around and I come to parts that need to be hemmed. If there's anything that isn't straight, if there are any jagged edges, I trim those away now, and I continue to work my way around the entire hem of the skirt. Once I've made my way around the entire hem of the skirt and everything is just the way I want it, it's time to start sewing. I find my starting point and I stick a safety pin in it. And then I do a nice little roll hem. I'm folding this under about 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch thin, just like the hems that are already in the shirts. And then I just go around hemming each part, clipping threads as I go, because again, this is a lot of fabric and sometimes it's hard to go back and find all of the hanging threads. So I go all the way around, and then finally when I come back to that safety pin, I know that I'm done. If you've made it to this point, kudos to you, and thank you so much for watching. If you make a shirt skirt, please share your pictures with me on Instagram at liveloverisa_. Let me know how it worked for you. Let me know if some parts of this did not make any sense to you. Maybe I need to revise. And if you find an easier way to do any of this, please let me know. I would love your feedback. If you want to see more videos like this, more tutorials, let me know in the comments below. If you think you're going to make a shirt skirt, let me know in the comments below. And happy sewing.